Okay, thanks again for staying with us. Reverend Olu Martin is Executive Director of Canvassers for Democracy and Rule of Law. Is also a pastor. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
We're here now. The question is, how do we get out of the present situation? Because the looting spree is taking the country by storm. Even in the north, where somehow people were of the opinion that the level of participation by the youths there was very low. But on the aspect of looting warehouses where palliatives have been kept, it's been massive and worrisome. How do we get away from all of this?
Yeah, it's a very simple thing. Again, I can't but just thank ITV for putting these very topical issues in the front burner. Very important. John F. Kennedy was the one who said, those who make peaceful resolutions impossible ultimately make violent revolutions inevitable. Life is a balance. We're told that the earth is where it is because there's an equal function between the centrifugal and centripetal forces that holds the earth here. So once there's an imbalance, the earth will go out of orbit and it may enter into Mars, it may enter into... So there's got to be that balance. Isaac Newton was the one that said, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. His first law of motion says everybody continues in a state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line except compelled by an external force. What has happened to the Nigerian mass is that there's an external force. Ordinarily, everybody was just having their own normal ways. But it gets to a time that people ask themselves, and do we continue life like this? Paul asked the question, shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? And he said, God forbid. So if people feel dissatisfied, if they feel disconnected from governance, if they feel that they are not part of what government is doing, ultimately, we're going to have some of these reactions that we currently, are having as far, as, Nigeria is concerned. And we're not very surprised. We are opined on this same station to say, look, a time may come, fearfully so too, that young people, because they feel disenfranchised, may see a convoy of cars on the road. We said that about 4 years ago. And you were here. Repeat a convoy and stop the cars. And say, okay, who get these 4 cars? I said, no, you need only one. You need only one. Because in developed societies, there's a consciousness to build a middle class. Yeah. Because you don't have the people who are super rich in America, 9, 10, 12%. The people who are abjectly poor, 5, 6, 7%. Even people who are jobless, people give them work. Because, you see, this thing that you call stomach, thank God that, you are a man of God yourself. A time came where people were boiling their children for food, sir. The Bible says 2 women came and said, let's agree. It was so bad, they decided to boil their own children. So if people are talking about people who are breaking into, government, reserves, and I do not support that. But that's what hunger does. It's easy for you to be an angel if your feathers have not been ruffled. Many of those who are saying this have not been so hungry that tears round down their eyes. Have you been so hungry that you salivated for bitter cola? Somebody chewing bitter cola, you're so hungry that you are salivating, for bitter cola. So it is easy, to brand people different kind of name because you are not within that age bracket of people who are barely getting by. So you have asked a very fundamental question. How do we get out of this imbroglio? How do we break out of this, seeming national brouhaha that is now threatening, in a manner of speaking, to swallow the whole of Nigeria? There's no other way than to address the issues. If a leader does not address the issues, if the leader does not address a problem, the leader becomes the problem, and the problem becomes the leader. Ironically. So you must address how did we get here that we have 20 million youth who are unemployed. The idle mind is the devil's workshop. If people were engaged, they would not have the spare time to break into silos. If people were engaged, nations of the world have conquered hunger. That's why they can enter into technology, because they've conquered. People are not thinking about, hunger. They're not thinking about food anymore. So they've gone into technology, they've gone into this. But if you have 2,000 naira, 3,000 naira, we're not thinking about technology. Nobody's going to buy vaccines, reagents, and all of that. We're going to think about buying yam. Because until we have conquered hunger, that we can move to other areas. So this is a salutary pointer to our leaders that there is something wrong. My mother used to tell me, say, now where the pain person and they put near fire. So what the young people of this country are trying to say is that the leadership needs to wake up. Leadership is by example. So I've jokingly said, if we have leaders that loot treasury, are we surprised that we have followers that loot warehouses? Because everything stops at the center of leadership. So if a man, for instance, is holding Indian hemp in his hand and he's puffing it and he's telling his son that Indian hemp is not good for your health, the young one cannot understand. If it's not good for my health, it ultimately also should not be good for your health. It's not in this country we have seen snakes swallow money. It's not in this country we saw monkeys swallow money. It's not in this same country that we saw people burying huge sums of money in soakaways, in septic tanks and in overhead tanks. So naturally, is that you are teaching the people to say, you know what, and nobody is supporting what people are doing. But when you refuse to bring the change from up, the challenge of bottom-up engine, that there's no leadership. Okay. It will just spread out like pellet. And when he starts to stop, it becomes an issue. So it is important that leadership starts very early.
What is the justification for the destruction of properties, whether private or government properties? I mean, the Speaker House of Representatives told the state, Lagos State Governor that they will need about 1 trillion naira to fix the properties destroyed in Lagos. I mean, Lagos has been worse hit on account of this hashtag protest. But you go across the country, you have this replicated. What is the justification for it?
There is no justification. There's only an explanation. Yeah, there's an explanation. There's no justification for crime, but there is an explanation, for crime. Even the law, they say that if a man comes into a bedroom and sees another man on top of his woman, he's entitled to 30 minutes of madness. After that 30 minutes, there's no justification for his action subsequently. But they mean that within the 30 minutes, it means that the man can do anything. There's an explanation for his action. There's no justification for his actions. I mean, very quickly, I remember one of the experiences that we had in Ambrose Ali University when we were fighting cultism. And thank God that's our alma mater. Some of us, God helped us to provide leadership with the support of people like you, even though people don't know that some of you are at the background, but there was leadership. Once there is no leadership, even the Bible says a time came when Israel had no king, and the people did that which was right in his eyes. So there is no justification, there's an explanation. The explanation is that the people have been pushed to the wall. The explanation is that the people are dissatisfied. The explanation is that people are disenfranchised. The explanation is that people are angry. The explanation is that our value systems are in the gutter. The explanation is that there's no accountability. There's no transparency. The explanation, sir, is the fact that the worst of people are presiding over the best of people. And if somebody less intelligent than you is your leader, he will rule by the bullet. He will rule by force. He will not rule by intelligence. That's why we jokingly say the joke of my benefactor is always funny. Even if he's insulting my mother, I have to laugh at him because that my laughter can determine, my next meal. So we have a crop, of leaders across, the states of the federation who have not demonstrated leadership. And if you don't engage your people, unfortunately, people are going to fill in the gaps by themselves. Yeah. If you don't provide explanation, people are going to provide the explanations, by themselves. So anger has pented up, and Nigeria is at a tipping point. So it is not surprising that because we have had pockets of dissent across the nation. From Niger Delta youths, from Odua People's Congress, from MASSOP, from IPOP, from all kinds of people. Now what has happened is that one common denominator, it's not just NSAS. Because my mother said, sometimes it's not the day your child breaks mortar that you beat him. Yeah. It is the day he breaks a plate that you beat him. You'll not be wondering, that's why you didn't break mortar before. So it's not just NSAS. NSAS just affected everybody. So now everybody has now found a common front. From NSAS, we just came up and said, oh, come, your experience was not with the police. Your experience was what? There's a terrible politician somewhere. Because if you have proper leadership, you can imagine, for instance, some of the houses that people were looting from. I'm wondering, which house could contain 300 keke? Which house could contain 250 bikes? You can imagine how massive that house. That's why I say there is no justification. There is an explanation for it. Unfortunately, the money government should have been using to develop, the money government should have been using, because it's unfortunately for Nigeria, Nigeria plays the Nigerian team. Nigerian team wait for Argentina to score one. Then we quickly start doing, why didn't we take the lead ab initio? Yeah. Why did we wait? For now, governments are making all sorts of promises. XYZ number for youth. I'm told that one governor is releasing 2 billion naira for youth. Everybody is now thinking that we need to include, the youth. Unfortunately, they make that scripture through Matthew 11:12, that from the days of John the Baptist till now, the kingdom suffer. It looks like the youth having decided to take it by force. The people are now waking up, to their responsibility. It is a trajectory. It's a sad commentary in the history, of this country. Forever we'll continue to remember it, but it's anchored upon the lethargy, the ineptitude of the majority of our leaders. I say majority because fortunately we may have one or two leaders, one or two governors who may have distinguished themselves and distinct themselves by the qualitative and proactive leadership that they have presented in their state or in their constituencies. But unfortunately, majority of them have shown that they have no interest for the masses.
If you have an enemy now, just tell the youth out there that, that guy has all the palliatives that were brought to your area, and then you are in trouble. And then something that was very shocking that came forward after the Lekki shooting. Of course, we're yet to know exactly who were the people behind it from the government response to that issue. The issue that came out was that the video was photoshopped or the picture was photoshopped. And I saw recently on social media that, if you say all these things that happened, they were photoshopped, the lootings that you're seeing, they were also photoshopped. I mean, we set up an investigation to find out. Yeah. So, it's just a conundrum of confusion here and there. But we've got to make progress in terms of putting the country on the right path to peace, unity, development. I'm a bit concerned with the ethnic coloration that has been brought to bear. We heard of a certain guy in UK who's been talking about, all the things that were destroyed in Lagos belong to the Yorubas. I thank the Southwest governors who have come out to say something in that direction. And then the IPOB leader was also heard in a particular audio recording. I don't know if it's recent. I couldn't really verify that, which seems to be giving instructions and command to everybody. And then people were reporting to him. What do you make of the ethnic coloration that has also trailed this protest?
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because when nationalism fails, people pander to ethnicism. And that's what somebody has said. We have seen thousands of Benis. We have seen perhaps millions of Igbos and millions of Fulanis or millions of Yorubas. But we have not seen up to 40 Nigerians. The reason is because the center is failing. So naturally, all over the world, when nationalism fails, people will naturally pander to ethnicism. Because we all should be married to our land. But if our land divorces us, we will now begin to find succor in ethnicism. The reason is because the center doesn't provide succor for us. Why does it look like that? Because the center doesn't seem to accommodate the plurality of Nigeria. People have talked about nepotism. There are some varying cases of nepotism. For instance, Northwest has 7 states. Southeast has 5 states. There is a state, before the state was divided, Kano, before it was divided, had about 44 local government. Kano has been divided into a couple of states, but it still has the same amount of local government and much more than Lagos has. So when you have some of those things that appear that there's a deliberate act to sideline some ethnic people in a nation where we have a common patrimony and we are common stakeholders, naturally, is that I will begin to say I'm a Benin man. When you begin to hear people begin to say I'm a Benin man, I'm an Igbo man, it means that the center is failing. Otherwise, in America, you don't hear people say, it is rare before you hear people say, I'm from Tennessee, I'm a cowboy. People come anywhere they go say, I am an American. Because the center protects them. Once the center does not protect you, naturally is that you are going to pander to ethnic sentiment. So it's unfortunate that we are beginning to find ourselves like this. However, there's the beauty part of it. The beauty part of it that it is also a salutary pointer to the fact that Nigeria is a conglomeration of nations. And the earlier we begin to talk about giving the federating unit the capacity, the ability to control their own resources and determine the destiny of our people, the quicker we are to grow. This behemoth called Nigeria that has a grand patron sitting in Abuja distributing palliatives on a monthly basis to benefactors, junior benefactors in code called governors, that contraption is fast becoming clear that it is not working. So I poo-poo it, I discourage it, but like I said, there is no justification, but there's an explanation for it. If I cannot go to Abuja and feel like a first-class citizen in Abuja, if I cannot go to the north and add Omar Sanda to Olu Martins without, and I cannot get a job, if it looks like in some of our very plumb agencies of government, it looks like if you don't have a certain appendage to your name, you cannot get job. You can understand why naturally the ethnic branches will begin to grow, because the center has failed. So it is incumbent, because we're simply postponing the evil day. It is incumbent on our nationalists. It's incumbent on the president of this country and in these several nationalities, because what has happened is that, it's like what happened to David. Eliab was upset. So what are you doing at war? You do forward. And David said, it's not because there's a problem. If Goliath was not threatening to annihilate Israel, and if nobody was providing solutions, I would not be here. It is because nobody was providing solutions. That's why I am here. The things that have happened is because there are certain fundamental factors attempting to annihilate the popularity of Nigerians, especially the youth. So it is back for us to say, if we cannot solve the problem, these things will continue. So let's go back to begin to visit the core issues, the foundation upon which this nation was built, so that when we say, arise, O compatriots, Nigeria's call, obey, it will not just be semantics and rhetorics. It will be from the spirit of our heart, because indeed we should be bound in unity. Once that unity does not exist, naturally, I'm going to go to my Oba, I'm going to go to my Obi, I'm going to go to my Emir and find succor in them, because the center has failed us.
Thank you very much, Reverend Olu Martin, Executive Director, Canvassers for Democracy and Rule of Law. It's always a delight to have you here on the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's a TMI. Within a week, a particular day was celebrated. I don't let it cut out of the bag on the program just yet. When our panelists come on board, we'll x-ray that and talk about it eloquently and in a very robust and exhaustive manner, so you can make sense of it and be part of it, because today things are changing fast. We need to be more responsive to our communities. That's where your relevance will be measured. That's when people will appreciate you. The days of acquiring so much and putting it in the house and hoping that someday, somehow, your generations unborn will benefit it, I mean, they are over. I mean, with the recent events in the last couple of days, we've got to learn from it. Not just government alone. We all have to learn from it. Make the world a better place for us all to live in, particularly in our humanitarian work. That's our next line of discussion. Stay with us on TMI Monday with yours sincerely. I'll be back with you in a moment.